Jorge, first of all, please tell us about InterLink Trade Services. When did you start and what do you do?
InterLink Trade Services, we started in 2005. I'm the president and founder of the company, and we provide U.S. custom brokerage services and warehousing distribution services, cross-border, mainly Mexico-U.S. Operations. But we also do transactions for air and ocean freight coming into the United States. We cater mainly to the maquiladora IMEX industry. We have customers in different industries: automotive, medical, metals, furniture, electrical, electronics, telecommunications. So we've been doing this, like I said, since 2005. We operate about 300,000 square feet of warehouse space, including bonded warehouse, and we have close to 80 employees. So we have been able to grow this company in 20 years.
And a big anniversary next year.
We'll turn 20 next year. Our first customs transaction was done May 13, 2005, so we'll be celebrating our 20-year anniversary. We're very excited about that.
So the buzzword these days, the last year or so, has been nearshoring. Is our region benefiting from nearshoring? What impact do you see there?
Yeah, nearshoring, it's actually a trend or something that has been happening for a few years. It kind of resurfaced or increased in popularity or in the buzzword since the pandemic, because the supply chain got tight, and nearshoring, reshoring, friendshoring, you're going to hear all different terms, means making products close to your customers. So yeah, I mean, that's something that we're looking forward in our region to benefit from it. It hasn't happened that quick. There's a lot of factors, including political factors, macroeconomic factors, geopolitical factors, but we still see that eventually at some point in time, nearshoring is going to pick up and we're going to benefit from it.
So you've got your finger on the pulse of U.S. Mexico trade. How are things right now, and what do you think the long-term situation will be?
Actually, Mexico has done fairly well with the United States. Right now, Mexico is the number one trading partner with the United States. So USMCA, its predecessor was NAFTA. So NAFTA really picked up trade between Mexico and U.S. But USMCA continued with the increase in trade. We see that we have to be a little bit cautious because we have new administrations both in Mexico and the United States. And in 2026, we're going to see not a renegotiation, but they're going to review the USMCA to see if it will continue for another 16 years. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen, because we have different characters now in Mexico and the U.S., and there's going to be different people reviewing USMCA. So we have to keep an eye on that, see how it impacts our trade relations.
So you've sort of answered this next question I had, but given that you started in this business in '95, NAFTA had just about started by then.
Yes.
But I was going to ask you, how important has NAFTA been, and then subsequently USMCA, how important have those two trade deals been?
Yeah, NAFTA started January 1st, 1994, and we saw a big increase, especially in the maquiladora industry, with the rules of origin and products assembled or produced in Mexico being free of duty. That allowed a lot of companies to move operations to Mexico. So to me, that was the first wave of nearshoring, you want to call it that way, that dramatically increased the trade between Mexico and the U.S. USMCA replaced NAFTA on July 1st, 2020. Actually, during the pandemic, it was very interesting. We thought it was going to be delayed, but they started in the middle of the pandemic. It replaced NAFTA with different conditions, mainly in the automotive industry. That's the biggest changes we saw. It's in the automotive industry. So it is still working well. It has some challenges. And again, it has the sunset clause, which in 2026, there's going to be the review of USMCA. So it has had a great effect, a positive effect, but we'll see what happens with this review in 2026.
So now we're going to get onto the real hot potato, the main reason for wanting to interview you today for this conversation. The thought of tariffs, trade tariffs. In general terms, what do you think of them?
Well, tariffs have been used in the past. Talking about the U.S., other presidents have used it, even President Bush and other presidents. But tariffs were highlighted mainly by President Trump in his prior administration. He implemented different tariffs on Chinese goods and steel and aluminum products. So they're used to negotiate or also help certain domestic industries not get impacted by the flow of foreign goods into the United States. So, I mean, tariffs, nobody wants to see tariffs. Obviously, the spirit of trade is free trade agreements, but sometimes they're a necessary evil.
And so why tariffs are in the headlines now during his election campaign. President Trump talked about a 25% tariff on Mexican goods coming in and also Canadian goods as well. And China would get tariffs as well. How big a deal is that for your industry?
It is a big deal because obviously, but talking about Mexico-U.S. trade, if they are implemented, that's going to be a huge economic impact. 25% is very high. He tried it with the prior, when he was president, and with López Obrador also. They didn't go through, they worked it out. So we're hoping that something's going to be worked out. But a lot of companies are very, very worried about these tariffs. So it is a big deal.
Particular industries are concerned, or is it across the board?
It is across the board because the general term that he's putting is that it's for every product right now. Obviously, internally, they're talking about certain products, certain commodities, but right now the message that he's coming across with is that 25% tariffs across the board. Blanket, yeah.
Yeah. So what is the mood in the industry? This is your bread and butter, this is your livelihood. What do you hear from all the importers and exporters?
Well, a lot of them are very concerned, and I have met with several of my customers and other companies to see, obviously, their question is, are they going to be implemented? How it's going to impact us? For how long? Those are all unknowns. We wish we had a crystal ball, but unfortunately, it's hard to decipher what's going to happen after January 20th. We hope not, but we have been recommending customers to implement some measures to mitigate some of the economic impacts and supply chain impacts that these tariffs can have. Obviously, there's different measures. They're not going to eliminate the tariffs that they're implemented, but might assist a little bit in minimizing their impact.
Can you give us some examples of that sort of advice you've been giving?
Yeah, for example, make sure they use proper valuation. If they're going to go by commodities, which we expect they're going to maybe pick certain products, assure that they have the proper tariff classifications on their products, proper valuation, use foreign trade zones, bond the warehouse, the drawback program. There are ways to mitigate the financial impact, but it is going to be interesting. It's going to be complicated.
And also on the campaign trail, when this topic was being discussed, for me, it didn't get enough attention. I didn't feel, but just as an observer. But when the discussion did come up, it seemed like economists from across the spectrum were saying that the people that are going to pay the price of these tariffs are the US consumers. President Trump disputed that and still does. What's your view on that? Who pays the price of tariff importation?
Pretty much, I think everyone is in disagreement with President Trump. He's saying that the exporting country, the producer, are going to pay for it. That's not true because the importer is the one that pays the tariffs. Now, they can negotiate pricing with the producers, exporters from China, for example, to reduce pricing, so that might reduce the tariff. But in reality, the importer pays that price. They might reduce their profit margins, but it's not enough. And at the end of the day, the consumer is the one paying those tariffs. And in a lot of cases, these tariffs are implemented to help certain industries, for example, the aluminum or steel industries. Well, if they're implemented on those products, the aluminum and steel industry, sometimes they say, well, they're paying this tariff, so I can increase my pricing too. So in reality, by the amount of those tariffs. So as a business decision, they say, well, I'll increase my pricing because they're going to be paying the tariff, so I can make more profit. So at the end of the day, it has an inflationary factor, and the consumer will pay the price.
Is there any possibility that this could simply just be bravado on the president's part, that he's just using it as a negotiating tactic to get more concessions from Mexico and Canada on any number of issues?
Yes, I think that's a big part of it. He has his book, The Art of the Deal, and like I said, he used this before with Mexico. Back then it was a 5% tariff. And his goal is to have Mexico, at least from the Mexican standpoint, stop immigration of illegal immigrants, and also drugs, stop the cartels. So that's his ultimate goal, to use this as a negotiating arm to have Mexico implement measures to reduce or eliminate that. So I know he has had conversations with President Claudia Sheinbaum. I think there are a couple of comments that he made that he sees that Mexico is doing something about it. I think they stopped a big fentanyl shipment in Sinaloa. They stopped a big caravan. The encounters at the border have been reduced. From a Canadian standpoint, Trudeau already had dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago, and he's even saying that he wants Canada to be the 51st state and make Trudeau governor. So I think Canada pretty much caved in to what Trump wants. Mexico is still going to be a challenge, but they're getting there. So our hopes are that with this, no tariffs will be implemented.
Yeah, and you mentioned President Sheinbaum. She said, if you do this, President Trump, we're going to have to do the same.
Yes, that's also another very important thing. It happens all over. You put tariffs on me, I'll put tariffs on you. Retaliation. And it becomes a trade war.
So we've already established that the losers in this are going to be the U.S. consumers, an inflationary economy potentially, and prices being passed on to the consumer. Are there any winners in a trade war or the imposition of tariffs?
In my opinion, at the end of the day, no. Obviously, there might be winners, those countries that cave in to the U.S. or Trump demands. They're the ones that are going to be benefiting. But at the end of the day, there's no major winners in a trade war, pretty much.
The other loser potentially being the border region in general, like we depend so much of our economy is, we're inextricably linked to the Mexican economy, and international trade is so important for jobs and our people's livelihoods here. So the border region stands to suffer the most?
Yes, the border region with cross-border activity, custom brokerage, transportation, warehousing, distribution, if these tariffs are implemented, we're going to see a decrease in trade. There's no way around it. How much, we don't know, but that will represent reduction in border crossings, in warehouse space requirements, transportation requirements. So we'll be impacted by this.
To the trade associations that you're a member of, are people going into bat on behalf of import-exporters are those discussions happening in Washington to try to pull the president away from this position?
Yes, there's been a lot of lobbying from different industry groups to convince the president or the administration not to go this far. Maybe something's going to happen with China, I know for a fact. It happened, in 2018-19, and even the Biden administration continued with Section 301 tariffs for China. and certain products like steel and aluminum, Section 232, but not overall, and especially not affecting your main trading partners, which is Mexico and Canada. A lot of people say, how in the world is Trump going to be able to implement tariffs if we have the USMCA, and the USMCA prohibits? Not necessarily. The USMCA is one thing, it's a trade agreement. Notice that NAFTA was North American Free Trade Agreement, and USMCA is U.S. Mexico Canada Agreement. They took away the word free. So not necessarily it's a free trade agreement.
So it doesn't automatically blow up USMCA.
The president has the rights by executive order to implement tariffs if he sees there's a national security threat or anything impacting the economy. So he has ways and means to do it. He doesn't need Congress approval. And USMCA doesn't restrict him from implementing these. However, like we mentioned, this creates a trading war. So that's not what we want.
Well, Jorge, these are all the questions I had. Is there anything I've missed out, anything you're working on that you'd like to tell the viewers about? Any other topics within your industry you'd like to mention?
Well, right now, like I said, these tariffs are a very hot topic, and then the USMCA review, that's another hot topic. So we'll keep reviewing and providing information on those as information comes along. We hope that the tariffs, like we mentioned, are negotiating tactics from the Trump administration and that things will work out. We're hoping for the best, but we need to get ready for the worst. And we have been advising companies how to mitigate some of those impacts, financial impacts. And actually, we're having a webinar tomorrow with CETA Custom Brokerage on it's called Trumped Up Tariffs, and how drawback can benefit, this and mitigate the impact. I'm going to be one of the speakers talking about maquiladora programs and how they can take advantage of the drawback programs and some of the restrictions and some of the things they can do. But we're going to keep working on this and providing as much information as possible.
I was going to mention to the viewers that you do a lot of webinars, and you often are a guest speaker. Sometimes you moderate panel discussions. If people want to learn more about your analysis of the situation, where do they go? How can they find you?
Well, I do send publications or notices to my customers. I also do LinkedIn publications. So anyone that is interested in getting information on certain topics like this, they can contact me. My email, Jorge@interlinktrade.com. I'll be more than happy to provide information. And if they want me to speak or be part of a meeting or a conference, I'll be more than happy to do so as well.
Well, thank you so much, Jorge. We've learned a lot, as we always do when we connect with you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you.